Hi, everyone. I'm Pip from Seymour Digital Media. You're listening to Know How Marketing Lab podcast. This podcast brings together different experts in marketing from our Facebook group, Cyberpunk Geeks Marketing Mixer. Each week, we get on here and we talk about something search marketing like Google Ads or SEO, social media marketing from Facebook to TikTok, or website marketing. If you're a marketer or aspiring marketer, a business owner or entrepreneur, this podcast for you. We're going to share the best SEO, search, social, and website strategies. We share tips and hacks, Google Ads strategies, what's going on in the current market. Each week we discuss something exciting and awesome in marketing.
That time again, it is time for Geek Speak. Today we are going to be talking about, the pitfalls and the promises of ChatGPT when it comes to websites. So just sort of, we're going to have a fun conversation about, things that we're kind of thinking about when we're thinking of, our websites, optimizing them, building them, all that good stuff. And especially in this world of using, AI platforms like ChatGPT. Of course, my name is Phelan. I work at Seymour Digital Media, where we focus on search engine marketing.
And I am Greg McKinnon from Original 72 Creative, and we're a full-service website graphic design and digital marketing firm in Vancouver. I guess, first to start off, why don't you throw a comment in the chat whether or not you've used ChatGPT or any AI in anything so far. Let us know. Let us know what it is.
Yeah, for sure. Whether you've done stuff with the images. I mean, of course, like nowadays, everyone's YouTube channels, it's like, I tried ChatGPT to do blank. And, there's like musicians getting them to write like songs and stuff like that. And so there's all kinds of people are trying new and weird edge cases, which I like. I definitely like to see what kind of weird stuff falls out of it, especially anything that's creative. I think that's always like more interesting where it's, hitting those weird edge cases that they're not really built for, like, and they don't really understand the subtleties of, and seeing what comes out of it.
Yeah. Like, just to start off, like, yes, I've used ChatGPT. I've actually experimented with Bard by switching my VPN on, so it didn't see that I was in Canada and limited me to not use it yet, because it wasn't available to me. So I've used both, and I mean, they're both very similar. I didn't use them enough to see really if the new Bard is, that much better or worse than ChatGPT, but they're very similar in how you use them and what you do with them. And I haven't really used a lot of tools yet that have been put out there specific to any industry. And I know there's a lot of developments, especially in my industry and SEO, which you guys focus on, that there's a lot of tools that are either coming available now or in development to be used to assist in using all of this technology to, do your SEO, do your content writing, or, help you with building sites. They're still all really, really new, and not like there's going to be tons coming out in the next little while. Have you yet had some experience with any of the tools that are available, and what's your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that I noticed is I'm right now building a Shopify website, and Shopify integrated in AI. I don't know exactly. I haven't dug into who, but they have like a little like magic icon, and you click it and it'll like write a product description, right? Because most of them are, fairly generic. And honestly, I found it to be good. I think when we were doing the prep for this is that a big kind of summary note about this is a lot of this stuff is like really good for a first draft. And bear that in mind, because like there's going to be subtleties and like the just points that a view that you'll have about whatever you're doing that you're going to want to bring into it. But it's, it's basically a nicer version of a Laurel Ipsum for when I'm kind of like, I'm trying to show a client like, hey, we're going to have this page look like this and kind of have this text. And it just can generate some text for me really quickly. That kind of does the job of like getting the client to feel like, oh yeah, I can see how this is going to feel. okay, we got these buttons here, and it's a little more engaging than having Laurel Ipsum, where they're like kind of just, I find that clients get distracted with that because they're looking at it, it's like, well, this doesn't make any sense. Like, well, yeah, it's not supposed to. So it's like good for that sense when we're kind of building out content and I need something to kind of show them to get, let's do a revision here, or I kind of want, like, could we make this 2 columns? Like, that kind of like we're going through the flow of the website and we're doing that part of it. Then they can kind of have something to work with while they're, someone's actually doing the proper content writing.
Yeah, I mean, I know that could be pretty powerful because from doing websites for over 20 years, a stumbling block in developing sites for me in all of this time really is the content and the customer giving me, like, everybody knows they want a website. Everybody knows they need a website, but they're like, okay, I need a website. But when it comes time to actually giving you, content for an about, or, product descriptions or service descriptions, or, like they're just completely lost, and you really need to hold their hand, or you have had to hold their hand in the past and take them through the process and be like, but so basically this is a long way of saying, for us designers who are building sites, it's difficult to show them what something might look like if you have nothing to put in it. So exactly. It will definitely help us in that respect. The drawback for me, I think, is more if these tools are baked into the site, like, I don't want to say it's going to be mandatory or like baked into the theme that I use, but I know they're working on a version of AI to assist with this in the theme that I use. And I don't want it to be baked into the site like there all the time. I want it to be something that you can turn on or off if you want to use it. Because the fear is, while it can assist you in the initial development and using some gibberish information that's sort of contextually correct for the business that you're building a site for, I don't want people to get used to using it. And like you said, this is like a first draft. I don't want them to get used to using this and being like, okay, it generated, oh, that sounds pretty good, I'll just use that. Because I feel that that's going to be bad, one, for the business itself, but two, the bigger issue is, and you can speak to this, is that the AI content is AI driven, and it's probably going to hurt you in the long run for, organic search results and that type of a thing. So I would prefer it almost not to be there for customers and them have to use an external source to get it, like just going directly to ChatGPT or a service that they can work on their content and have it help them with their content, and they would revise it and change it, and like as a starter, and then implement it into their site.
Yeah, like it's definitely, I almost find it like we've done it a little bit for like workshopping ideas. Like, give me a new headline for about this topic for like Google Ads, and like it definitely leaves a little bit to be desired, but it definitely can help you like, oh, I hadn't thought of combining those words. So it helps you with workshopping things. And I definitely agree with you that a big fear that I have is that A, people are going to get lazy, and B, people don't know that Google already has deconstructors, where they just basically take, because it's a predictive algorithm that built this, that they can based on those sets of words, they could just say, oh, because these sets of words are like this is probably AI written. And so they've already built deconstructors for it, and they're definitely keeping on top of it because they want content to be, human readable, not like, because if everyone just did like AI writing, like, then what's the point, right? Like that's not really what Google wants. And it's definitely one where you've got to watch out with not getting too complacent with just over relying on it. But also it's still not really one of the big things that I think that it will get better is that it is supposed to use a feedback device. So you are supposed to say to ChatGPT, I did like this, positive, negative. So that actually helps it hone over time, and it's supposed to improve the quality of the results over time. How much that's going to be impacted because there's always new bits of data. So it's always a complicated mess of like how fresh is the data that they have in their system, and then also like how good is the feedback that they're getting back. Because I know some people, like we talked about at the top, are trying to like troll it a little bit and get like weird results because that's what they're trying to do for content online, and so they're intentionally giving it weird feedback to kind of get it to do those weird edge cases. And so it'll be interesting to see how those kind of get fed back into the algorithm as it takes in feedback from real people and says, you know, how that's all going to play out over time. So I think that'll be one that we haven't, it's hard to foresee because it's people, right? Like that's the actual part that's going to be, it's like the actual human intelligence is going to want different things because different people want different aspects out of it, and different people will say what's good or bad. So that part I think will be interesting over time of like kind of figuring out like the results, and are they going to be personalized to a person, you know, all kinds of weird stuff like that as well.
Well, it makes me think what you had just mentioned there with it, you know, sort of learning over time and getting better would be that, I mean, if you want it to learn contextually what you want it to do, you can prompt it before, like you can start with prompts that, you know, sort of set it up to understand that you want it to answer or provide you certain information in a certain way. And I don't think it will learn in that session that what you're wanting will be done in a certain way. But in the grand scheme of things, if someone else is also asking for something similar, it's probably not going to, you know, be answering you based on what someone else had prompted it previously. So it'd be interesting to know how it does learn over time to give better information, apart from, you know, a single session of you trying to get it to give you better information in the context that you want to use it.
Yeah. What I would say, as well off of that is that, so there's a whole thing about it like being able to clear your history. So it does, apparently OpenAI does keep a record of what you, because they make you log into it now. It's not, you can't just randomly go in. So they'll have some history through your Google profile. I mean, that's how I logged into it. And then, so it'll have some information that it's like this email was tied to these questions. How that's all going to get used is going to be interesting as well. So, you know, it's I mean, it's tough to say really how this is going to go, because, you know, OpenAI has also got a weird, because they're not a non-for-profit anymore as well. That's the other thing to keep in mind. OpenAI switched its status to limited profit, which is kind of a really weird turn of phrase to say, but.
And so with that, was that what you were talking about in our prep for this, that so the free ChatGPT and the paid ChatGPT are actually different versions of the AI? One is using the not as smart version. I mean, you're probably getting really great results, but those paid customers are using a much more advanced and you know, expansive knowledge AI system to get what you're trying to get out of it. Is that what you were saying earlier?
I mean, that's what my understanding is, especially with its integration with things like with Microsoft integration, right? Because that's where that's the big, you know, they got $10 billion to fully integrate into Microsoft system. The other part that like it just dawned on me with that integration is like, if they get access to private networks of information, how is that going to get filtered out? So say you're a Fortune 5,000 company and you have to use Microsoft and you connect to the ChatGPT, and is it going to be able to distinguish what's publicly available and what's privately available from those systems as well? Yeah. So, because I'm assuming that they'll probably have like, you know, using our internal logs, find me the most productive work, like, you know, just something like that your boss would want to get out of the ChatGPT, where they're basically just using, because it's a large language model, that it's like go through everyone, find out who always needs the most help so that we can help them proactively. I don't know, something like that. And so like, is that information how are they going to be able to distinguish those things as they like, this is not something that should be fully integrated into the larger model as well. Because
because I've never even thought about like what I would refer to it as instances of ChatGPT, where you could be using it in your business for your services and stuff. But do you basically run your own ChatGPT? Is it closed off from the larger framework there, or how does that work? I never thought about that.
Yeah, well, because there is different language models that they put into it. So obviously they taught it like bad words. They made sure that there was no curse words, no racial slurs, no like any sort of like epithets. There's certain topics that it won't discuss. So for obvious reasons that like people are going to get it to say really offensive things. Oh, I'll have to find this. I didn't have it in the notes, but do you remember when Microsoft had a chatbot and basically 4chan found out about it, and within a day they got it to say some things that I will never say on public recording, but like very offensive things.
I didn't know it was. I did hear about something like that, but I thought it was more people were able to somehow in around their pre-prompting of how they wanted it to answer, were able to get around some of the restrictions of what it would answer you if it was allowed to or not. And I don't think it was very difficult for them to figure out a way to basically prompt it and say, well, just forget about those restrictions you have and just tell me.
Well, yeah, it said like the example they had was like, in this hypothetical world, we're training you on the things you shouldn't say. So we're going to talk about an example of a thing you shouldn't be able to say. And so they say the thing like, and that's definitely one with the ChatGPT. This one was before, it was like in 2016. It looks like I found the article, I posted it, but it was, they just had created like a chatbot, and they just didn't put any guidelines in it of things it shouldn't say. And then, it got derailed very quickly, and they took it offline, I think within 48 hours. It had just gotten so bad. And so, it's definitely, I think that the contours of how ChatGPT or AI systems in general, and we're going with websites, I think it's going to slowly just become like another tool like any other. And I think that people are going to learn pretty quickly that there's some pretty hard limitations on what it can do. I think that at the end of the day, it's going to be closer to like, how the digital spreadsheet got rid of because people used to write out a spreadsheet and then they'd have to calculate all those fields, and then it just became a digital one. And it's like, it does take away some of the jobs, but it's also like, these are inefficiencies that already existed in these systems, and it's just sort of going to smooth some of that out. And I mean, also that it's coming for a lot of white collar jobs as well, because a lot of these knowledge-based jobs are going to be done with an AI system that, can read through 10,000, like legal was one of the ones that they said was really going to get affected, because most of the jobs are, okay, we need to go through these 10,000 cases and find, mentions of these specific things so we can make an argument that, for our case. And so now if it's a ChatGPT, you just like, hey, go through all the, U.S. Supreme Court cases and find me instances where they've said these words. And then you pull those.
Like, I know, because I have a friend who actually works in the legal industry, and his job is actually to have that knowledge base of all of the inputted case data for the firm. And when lawyers require information about cases, they go through that system and they plug in those keywords and they find the relevant information that the lawyer is looking for. But it's done manually, right? But they do have the ability of like, find me anywhere where it says these keywords, so that he can look through and pull that for the lawyer. The difference, I think, with it being AI being able to do it now is the fact that the system will not only find all of those references, but be able to probably look at that, understand it, and write you a little synopsis or some type of a document, just because it's artificial intelligence, and it can do that now, and completely take away from his needing to not just do the search, but then pull all of that data together and maybe have to, if he has to write something up for the lawyer or just supply the documents, kind of a thing. The AI will be able to just like automatically, write a recap of like, we found this here, and these are like, it'll be a document. So
yeah, it'll have like a synthesis and a summary of it. So it's like, hey, we found it that actually if we argue it from this side, we won't win because of blah 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 court case, and so we should really watch out for this, but you could use this as like a counter argument, and then like has like a little synthesis of all of it. So yeah, because that's where the AI does a lot better than it really will excel, is like taking large bits of data and then synthesizing it into like, hey, we found this, but we've also found this. And it's not inherently going to have a viewpoint one way or the other. It's just going to list out like a set of points that it's found in the data that it's combed over.
Want to know more about SEO? We've got a class for that. Our mission is to educate students about the right tools, techniques, and strategies to grow their businesses using the most up-to-date search engine marketing optimization techniques and tools. Find out more at knowhowmarketinglab.com.
And that was the other one, is like there's a Pablo Picasso quote that I really like that kind of goes to why I'm not really super concerned with the AIs, is that computers are useless. They can only give you answers. Meaning like it can only spit out an answer, but someone has to think up the question. And like that's where people come in, and like ultimately humans are not gonna like be taken out of this loop. Like that's just not realistically ever gonna happen. But it's still gonna require
someone still needs to ask it for it.
Yeah, and know what to ask, right? Like you have to have some sort of analytical knowledge to be able to go like, oh, actually an interesting question would be this. And then it has to answer you, but like it didn't think up the interesting part because it needed that prompt in order to have that idea exist. So,
well, we talked a lot about content and AI and how it may change your web development or SEO or content development for your sites and business. Do we want to touch briefly, as the time ticks down here, on some image AI and our thoughts?
Yeah, because I think we had a lot of fun with this one of just like that, because there's definitely some very funny subreddits of, is it Wally? Was it Blursted? Like, ones where people ask for things and it just gives back the weirdest images. And so they're just like, and yeah, there's some pretty fun subreddits of just AI generated images. So it's definitely, I think that's the one that has the furthest to go as for image content. I suspect that, I mean, for my own reading, I don't think that the images is just there's too many subtleties in making an image that I just don't see the AI system being good enough, other than something very basic.
Well, like we talked about fingers, it has a hard time drawing hands and fingers. So it doesn't get the number right all the time. But if I'm thinking of artificial intelligence as it pertains to, images and graphic design, I'm not too worried about it, because I feel like it's going to be something where it's more, inspirational, because it's not producing you imagery that is vector graphics that you can then pull into like Illustrator or Figma or something and manipulate and, do what you want. So I think for me, I see it as a, imagine a brand that, has, is luxury and watchmakers and has this, and this is the name, and, create me a couple of variations of logos just to see what it comes up with for inspirational purposes, sort of as a mood board of like, I just prompted it, the information of my company. Let's see what it, generates for me, and use that as the starting point of, if you like something that it produces, to actually go and have a designer produce that artwork based on, you know, what you've kind of generated. It's not going to give you a final logo, for instance, right? Like
Yeah.
that's just not how it's going to work.
No, it's just not. Yeah, like I said, with the written content, this is a lot of first draft kind of stuff. It'll be kind of like, yeah, I think that's the big takeaway. Is it's a lot of like, you know, like a workshopping, like different ideas. Like, you know, you could do different versions of like, give me 3 images where it's like, and then whatever the prompt is, and then in different styles, and so you can kind of look at different options. One of the interesting ones that I was surprised at how quick this went through the courts is that any AI generated image cannot be copywritten. This came out with a completely AI generated comic book. And so the legal statute they decided on was, since no one created it, it can't have a copyright attached to it. It's sort of similar to like plagiarism for like schoolwork, because the plagiarism statute in most schools is, did you write this? Yes or no? And if you just like, no, I did a prompt, well, that doesn't count as you having written it now, does it? So that's where it will be interesting to see how those shake out.
The other thing about the image AI is how it generates its images and what inspiration it pulls from, because you're prompting it with things like, you know, give me a Picasso like image of, you know, XYZ and stuff like that. So because you're using styles of copyrighted artists that have paintings or things like that, is there sort of a gray line that what it produces should be copyrighted to, you know, that artist or something? And my thought on the whole thing would be more like, I mean, it's really no different from what I do today in web design or graphic design. I'm looking at all kinds of inspiration from all kinds of things, right? It's everybody looks at things, has a mood board of, you know, other companies, websites, logos, you know, paintings, whatever your industry is. You're pulling inspiration of like, I really like that, I'm going to do my version of that. So there's really no difference to me, other than the fact that contextually it may be able to do it way better because it has this digital ability to reproduce it potentially. But it's basically doing the same thing by like knowing that style and producing an image in that similar style. So I don't know where I fall on that whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I would count it as more like, I don't know, like rote repetition of a thing rather than like expressing itself doing it, right? Like, it's like if I don't know, like if I had traced a drawing of someone else, you know, it's not quite the same as me creating it myself, because I'm kind of like following guidelines someone else laid out. So I think that it's one of the more interesting ones as well, because copyright is like such a weird field. A really good person to follow for this is Cory Doctorow. He did a lot of work with Mozilla and Electronic Frontier. And so he's quite an interesting guy for like hearing, like just kind of like, he's very familiar with all the copyrights and how they work with DMCA and how, you know, it gets used and abused. And like, and it's definitely, he's got like weird examples of like, guys have written essays where you read this essay, it's all about like freedom and like against copyright, and then you find out that all of the essay, every word, and it's actually taken from other people's essays, and it just recombined it into different words, because that's part of like, it's that process of writing is also about like recombining, and you're getting inspiration from different sources. So it's definitely one of the interesting ones that I think that will get shaken out over time. But I think that the AI generated art, it leaves a lot to be desired, just as an like, because it doesn't understand the subtleties of like how a person would interact with a, you know, with an image, or how they would see something, right? It's going to have that uncanny valley, and it's going to hit that uncanny valley really quickly, because it's going to be close, but it's not quite there. And so like, it's in that close but not quite is where people really get like, that's weird, and that's where their reaction's going to be.
Yeah, I know I have maybe a little bit more of an issue with it, knowing just recently, I think it was Midjourney has a new feature that you can actually upload an image that and then prompt, like, using this image, like, change it around to, give me certain versions of, so it has something that you've uploaded to start with, and then it will, do the additional things to it to generate, 2 or 3 or however many more versions of what you've uploaded to start with. And if someone uses a copyrighted image to start with because they want something like it, I don't know if that's maybe more a moral issue or if it's really a copyright thing. But if you didn't buy that image, or you don't have access to use that image, but you got, like, so for instance, to go quickly, because I know we're pretty much out of time, on iStock, you can download samples, right? But it has, like, sometimes the
watermarking,
the watermark on it, right? But it's very faint, right? Who knows if the AI would even detect that watermarking? So you download a sample because you didn't buy it, and then you feed it into the Midjourney and say, produce me an image like this, but and then you say change it around a little bit. Is that morally, I wouldn't want people to be doing
or
that,
legally,
but,
or legally,
legally, like, you technically got an image from them that legally, because it's a sample, and you asked something to kind of make you something like it. Would it really be illegal or not?
So obviously not a lawyer, but definitely ChatGPT, OpenAI has right now, someone did an analysis that there's 220 million copyright violations in ChatGPT.
Right now.
And basically they figured that might have been a reason why they had partnered with Microsoft, who has very deep pockets and very good lawyers. And also very good lobbyists in Washington, D.C., to make sure that they don't get called to account for the flagrant copyright violations that they could have done. So this is definitely one where, yes, there's a lot of legal issues with this.
It'd be interesting to have another topic on the legality of a lot of this stuff, because now you just sort of opened my mind to, if there's all of this copyrighted content within ChatGPT, what happens if you produce something out of ChatGPT, like, you go about your business getting something, and what it gives you is some copyrighted information that is in its system? Who is at fault there? Like, do you get screwed for copyright? Or it's like, there's so many questions, because all of this is so new. It's really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's definitely a lot to chew on. We've gone over time, so I got to wrap up. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of food to chew on. And so, yeah, it just kind of leaves us to say, come and join us in the Facebook group. There's a lot of messages from the group at the Cyberpunk Geek Marketing Mixer, and join us there, and we'll keep the discussion going, and definitely leave a comment. And it just leaves me to say, my name's Phelan.
And I'm Greg. Thanks for joining us today.
Okay, bye for now.
The conversation never stops in our Facebook group, Cyberpunk Geeks. Join us at facebook.com/groups/cyberpunk geeks to ask your questions, meet new friends, and learn even more about search, social, and websites.